Again, once more, welcome to today's class as we proceed to observe the amazing nature of God in terms of His grace. We have seen beautiful things about God's grace, how God, the very God with whom one day we have to do, is a God who is gracious, and He is extending that grace to all humanity. And you say that this is important because then no one will bring any form of excuse on the day that God has to put us to account. A time comes when man has to account every minute of his life, every breath that God gave him, and the word of God and the creation, everything, because God is one who is sovereign. And we understand, even in the giving of those talents, the three categories of people. One was given 1 talent, another 2, another one was given 5, and we know what happened in that context, because ultimately each person, whether they got received small talent or bountifully, they had to account for it. Now, there are 3 ways by which God's grace is operative or is at work in a practical sense in human history. And I say that we look at them today, God willing, and see how far we can go. With this 3, I've just thinned it down to 3 so that we begin to appreciate the outworking and operation of common grace in the world. We have been talking about restraint. We also talked about the words. We look at them today. And then, God willing, we see how redemption accentuates common grace. Can someone, therefore, please remind us about what we said about how common grace is used by God to restrain us? Because we are now talking about the fallen humanity. We're not talking about fallen humanity and in the context of sin and evil. So how does God use common grace to restrain both sin and evil in the world? Remember, man is fallen. The world is fallen. And God does not allow man to plunge himself into utter destruction, which is the potential nature of the fallenness. So how does God, we talk about this, how does God restrain evil and sin in the world? By the means of common grace. One of the ways, yes, please go ahead.
God gave us government.
We call them human institutions. Authorities. What about governments? This call them local or civic governments. We talk about families, isn't it? Where we have parenting taking place in the context of families. There's some expression of family, whether believers or not believers, because these are now common to everyone. We have civil government is not only applicable to the fallen world, but also us. We have families. Even the unbelieving world, they have a concept of family where we have parents, children and their parents being parented. And it's amazing, as we open this, we have seen civil authorities in Romans 13. You can turn there, and we are going to turn to Hebrews to see the concept of family and how that is used by God to restrain evil and sin in this fallen world. Romans and chapter 13. So which verse in that context brings clearly that idea of restraint? Someone to open there and show us from that context of Romans chapter 13, which verse evidently demonstrates that God restrains evil and sin in the fallen world. And how? It's just there in chapter 13, verses 1 to 7. We have talked about it, so yes, please. Yes, please.
There's no except and those that exist in this state. Therefore, wherever exists and also exists to be present. For we must not but we don't have freedom of the one who is in then he was spiritual. He received for he is God's servant for your good. But if you do not be afraid, for he does not bear the sword of faith. For he is the Son of God, and the ancient place of God's hand, and the Lord King. Therefore, one must be with temptation, to avoid God's and keep also the same conscience.
You can stop there. So how does that work out practically? You see how practically God then uses these human institutions like civil governments. What does this authority do to restrain evil? Is the point you ask. Or how does it work against people?
You must use laws and regulations in place, and then if we then go against them, it's just punishment for them.
I want to draw your answer to this. Is this black and white there? Yes, please.
Therefore, whoever speaks the relationship and who speaks the who resist the and those who resist the for rulers are not ever good conduct, but to God. Will you have no fear of the one who is authority?
Someone to be succinct. Put it. Verse 4 says,
So he is not sacrificed for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for it does not bear the sword in faith. So he bears the sword. The first one is for your good, that is to protect right. And then if he is wrong, he bears the sword, which
so what does that do to us? How does it restrain evil? You people are not hitting the nail on the head. Yes, my sister down there. Fear. Who is not afraid of punishment? Isn't it? That's the first story. But then was number 4. How many of us have children and they fear being spanked? So on that basis, they can even swear on their graves. Mommy, I'll never do it again. Mommy, if you're going to spank me, just because they're afraid of the punishment. People fear pain. That punishment or pain is something that we fear. Or judgment. So there's fear. God uses civil authority to restrain. People are careful because of fear, isn't it? They imagine what will happen, the consequence. And so because they are afraid of the consequence of whatever their action is going to lead to, they are restrained. Not because inherently they are good. Remember, even the children, sometimes because they fear that you'll beat them or spank them. I think spanking is in the US, isn't it? For us, we beat them. Because they fear that you're going to cane them and beat them terribly, on that basis, they restrain themselves from that. There's sugar on the shelf. What prevents that child from reaching out and taking the sugar. Fear. Not because his heart is converted. But we live in an unconventional. Why would they not touch your money that you put in somewhere? Sometimes even know the password combination is for the safe. Don't think they can zoom. They just observe. They know. Brothers and sisters, don't think your children do not know your password for your M-Pesa. They can easily manipulate things. But what restrains them from going that direction? Because sometimes they do, isn't it? Sometimes they do. They steal from us. Yes, my sister.
And also what restrains seriously our conscience, so that we are able to understand between wrong and right.
It's the conscience is in the conscience there's fear put. So the idea is it's fear. That fear is put in the conscience of man, naturally speaking. It is natural. So because it's natural, remember we're talking about common reason. It's natural, there's natural fear in the conscience of man. So because of that, they know that this has repercussions. Whatever I'm about to do will have consequences. On that basis, because I fear the pain, the suffering, the punishment that comes with it, I'd rather not do it. But if given opportunity, you can be surprised. Yes.
I mean, because that when we go to Romans 2:15, they show that the work of the law is written in their hearts, while their conscience also bear witness, and their conviction was appealed for children at children.
So we are talking about human institutions like government, and we're talking about human institutions like families. How God uses families like you have children at home. What is it that made the children not do some bad things at home? They are feared because you've punished them. That's what I'm talking about. And that fear is natural because it's put in the conscience. That's why if someone can overcome the fear in the conscience, they can see it. Okay? The moment they can become hardened, that they no longer fear the consequence, nothing distance them. You know that? Exactly. Yes. As opposed to being free. There's no fear. Nothing makes them afraid anymore. Bless God for fear in the heart. As long as the fear abides, be thankful to God. If ever we kill the conscience and so there's no fear there, nothing prevents us. No wonder, even in the fallen world, those who cannot dress even the way they want, they can even walk naked, is because what has happened? The conscience is so dead that there's no longer any fear. That fear is very important. It's common grace. It's common grace. It's not because they are Christians. Just for the sake of the conscience that has fear, they are distant from going that direction. Otherwise, people can even walk naked in the world. Without care. It takes the killing of the conscience, okay, for you to deal with the fear. You have to be hardened as a king. I think I love that. You have to be hardened. Some hardening of the heart has to take place. So hardening that it becomes unresponsive. There's no response to stimuli. Whatever you do, whatever you say, sometimes you talk to a child and they just, you observe that your elder brother or your younger brother, mommy or daddy is talking to him and the head is just like this. Ucheng, are you listening? Ucheng, are you listening? They have not killed their conscience. They're not even listening to you now. As soon as you're done with the meeting, back to action. So you're wondering, did this guy listen to the parents? It's because they have harmed their conscience. That's how God, it's common grace that preserves us, brothers and sisters. Yes, my brother.
Also, very good to understand that when we are making decisions, say, and we feel pain, that pain is also a means of common grace. Without having that pain, it would be neutral.
And by the way, I can tell you that That pain is even used in the restoration of sinners. All right? When they have suffered the consequence of their sins, that's why I call it church discipline. When they have suffered the consequence of their sins, it dawns on them that it's not enjoyable, whatever they are. Because the Bible expects us to put them what? To hand them over to Satanism. So that there's some suffering. Having experienced the pain, before they experience the pain, they just be different. But the moment they come to the understanding that this pain is not enjoyable anymore, they come back. Pain is a good thing. Pain is a very important thing. It pleases God that He preserves at least some measure of pain that we can be easily restored. Because of that, we can be taken back to the road. If ever you overcome that, you're going to be in trouble. A society that has overcome pain and fear, they can do anything. You are killing them, and that's why I was afraid during the Gen Z period. Because the more the government charges on them, the more they get hardened. You realize that? And they are charging against them, towards them. I mean, remember what happened during the days of Noah. People were so hardened, and the days of the Babel, people were so hardened that they are going to do anything. Because the intention of the heart is what? Only evil, but content. So when that child is still responsive, there's hope. You have a daughter, you have a son, I have two sons. As long as there's some fear God has put in their hearts, there's hope that they can express some morality. This is morality because of fear. Have you seen what happens when lights just go off in a minute? You know what happens at night when there's some lack of faith at night? You know what goes on at night? I thank God we are Christians, you're safe. But the cities and the towns, they get messy at night. Because somehow there's no fear. Which is what I'm about to say again. Not only the fear of human institutions, but also the fear of that the embarrassment and the shame, the image. Remember, God has created man in his own image. So that necessarily has to bring shame and embarrassment when someone does something that is evil. So that for the sake of the shame and the embarrassment that will come upon them, they rather not do it. Have you seen people who, just for the sake of the shame and embarrassment, they don't do something that is evil? Just to preserve the image. Not because they are good people. They know the consequence of a bad image. We undertake to somehow protect our images as human beings because that image expresses something about God. So there's shame and embarrassment that comes when that image is assaulted. And so because of that, someone is able to be restrained from going to the extreme. That's why I told you that if you give them the environment, the atmosphere, where the fear has been taken away, they can go full length. Is it related? Yeah. Yes, sir.
That's also because it happens also to our forefather Adam. When he was saved, Genesis chapter 3, and the Lord is coming to check on that day. He runs away. And in verse 10 of chapter 3, he brings us forward. Verse they are dead. And he said, I had the sound that he responded to the Lord. I had the sound of doing the garden, and I was afraid because I was dead.
Fear.
In
fallen man.
He has just fallen.
And
the Lord preserves fear.
So that he's afraid because he's naked.
Yes.
He can't expose himself. That's why we are saying that it takes the killing of the conscience to go that length. To just expose yourself. If you see people who can easily do that in public, it has to do with what now they have done. Because God himself has put fear naturally there. So they have to overcome the fear by killing the conscience. They have to work very hard. So it means it is not something that done once. It has been done repeatedly. How do you kill conscience? Repeated action. You do it, people talk, well, I can take it. The next time you did, I can take it. Mom didn't complain, dad didn't complain. Oh, well, I was able to take the pain. As you do it repeatedly, you become whatever can describe as you become habitual. So you can just do it. So the restriction that God brings to the world through common grace is because of what? Either the fear of the consequences of authorities or the fear of the image. Because God Himself has left His fingerprints in the life of man. Yes, sir.
This is called characteristic.
I love it. So, isn't it? It's here. We have a question. They are unresponsive. You talk to them, they don't respond. Speak with them, whatever you do now, they are not responding because now they are affecting their conscience because of that. And that's why we can't. The point here, as a Christian, why is it then therefore dangerous to dwell and stay in sin? That is to sin habitually, to live in particular sin longer. What happens when you expose yourself to say one sin longer with gasoline? Yes, you can. Exactly, it dulls and lulls the conscience. It kills it so that it will be very difficult to be responsive. Because the more you stay in sin, the more you justify it. The more you find reasons why it's okay. Satan will begin to minister to you. It becomes your preacher. You no longer listen to God. And that's why I always tell you that those who want to fall, the first thing that happens is that they take themselves from the word of God, the means of grace. Where they don't hear the voice of God, Adam, where are you? Okay? Because every time you come to church, what happens? God preaches to us, Adam, where are you? Instead, they hear the voice of Satan. Did God really say? Then you begin to justify. Really, I think so and so sin is not very, it's very bad. Mine is not very bad. Really, we begin to compare and to compromise on the end of the day. Thank God for fear that kept you until grace found you for 7 years. That was sustenance, isn't it? There's so much that we need to see something else as regards parenting in Hebrews. In Hebrews and in chapter 12. Someone read from verse number 7 up to 11. Yes, please.
God is treating you as sons. For what sign is there? It's rather the sort of discipline. If you are left without discipline, which all have participated, and you are illegitimate children and not sons. Besides this, we have had earthly fathers who discipline us and we respect them. Shall we not much more be subject to the Father of spirits in the earth? For they discipline us for a short time as it seems best to them, but He disciplines us for our good, that we may share His holiness. For the moment, all discipline seems painful rather than pleasant, but later it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by us.
So again, the fatherhood of God is compared to the father of man, isn't it? But one is greater, that of God, because of the one disciplining you and the results it produces. But there's a comparison there. Now, what do you know in verse number 11 about discipline? Two things I mentioned there. One thing actually, put in two different ways. What do you know about discipline? Because we have talked about it here. What do you know? Yes, sir, Evans?
It is anything.
Other than? For instance, you have talked about pain, isn't it? And you said that's a good thing, isn't it? I thank God for fathers here. You see how we talk about family, isn't it? I thank God for fathers who are very keen on discipline here. Because you are exercising our common grace. Yeah. That's how God operates in the apartment of his common grace. Because you're dealing with a sinful person. That child is not an angel. I thank God for God who say that he's a viper in the night. Very soon, the viper will kill you. If we don't just ignore discipline that child, it will come back to you. You'll come to steal your own money. Just tell them you love them. Just pamper them with love. You don't love. Being a nice parent, just be a nice parent. Oh, I love him. I've named him after my dad, my mommy, daddy. Just pamper that child. Because you're dealing with a viper. And fail to discipline that child. Because you're wiser than God. God expects that discipline be what? Painful. And not pleasant. And not pleasant. No wonder I'm not talking about panking and spanking, I'm talking about beating. You know how in the West they spank? Daddy, mommy, very gentle. The Bible expects that this will be what? Painful. Because it is used of God and by God to calculate or inculcate some form of immorality in a fallen world. That child is but continually evil and sinful. That child. It is God using you so that it's not as bad as it should. Thank God for that. Then, when you're done with the child, you hand him over to the government. Yes, my brother's kid.
My father was the type who, even when my dad walked in the house, he just wouldn't talk in the way he was control himself. And at that point, I'm saying that it was not pleasant. It was very big. Land of new problem. But when we compare how it turned out vis-a-vis how a lot of the young children now are, you can tell the difference. Because for us, that fear was still. There are sometimes, in my own house, but there's some people that is going to father out. You will be that. So, I'm just thinking about the things that you see outside. Even some dressing, how some of many people now dressing. You can tell there's a very big lack of that painful and pleasant discipline. Still now.
Is it not even true in schools? Even in schools. Now they don't span. What happens? Kila wiki wanachoma shule, si ndio? Wanapiga walimu. Wananyorosha walimu, isn't it? I'm telling you, we can't be wiser than God. God knows the extent of depravity. He knows how to, at least in an interim, sustain it. God is able to make the one that you live bare out of this common means that He's using. So where there is a failure, in instilling discipline and morality in the children, the society will decay. We fail to parent our children because we want to pamper them, the society will decay. Yes, my sister.
So what you're saying means God has given parents the authority
Exactly.
to teach and the discipline.
Exactly. And to instill morality. And that's what about human authority. The authority. Your parent is an authority, especially your father. Answer. Your work is to ensure that Jerry amelaimbishwa. Kuna mranda. Wewe ni seremala. And God has conferred that authority on you. So when they ask you, why am I, Daddy, why are you spanking me? Order from above, isn't it? It used to be good. Order from above. That's the only basis. After I'm done with him, to become good. God is so gracious. Please, let's not bypass the means God has ordained. At least in the common sense. To not spank our children and to discipline them is to not love. It's not love. It's not love. Where children are loved because you want them to be responsible. Where they're not loved, they want to. I mean, sometimes I talk to children and you walk around and you talk to someone's son. In our days, a parent will not be talking to you. Anybody's parent and your pocket. Yeah? Hey, if you're playing football and teachers don't have responsible, you would attention, isn't it? Until they pass. Regardless whether you're in school or not. We knew that anybody in this world who is like your parent, is your father, mother is a parent. When I was growing up, we didn't have the concept of uncle. Uncle was Baba in my community. You know, uncle is from the West. Uncle means the brother of your father. No, in my culture, it's not uncle. It's your father. You treat him as you treat your father. You fear him as you fear your father. But right now we have uncle, isn't it? Uncle and auntie. No, it doesn't work like that. Please, the moment we depart from biblical principles of doing things, we invent our own ways, human ways of doing things. The world decays. We can't invent our own ways of doing things. A society, that's what I'll keep telling you, like a society where, generally speaking, there's fear of God, generally, there will be some form of morality, generally speaking. Because there's some doing of what God has said, somehow, in that society. Yes, my God.
Issues of God
I mean, and that's true whether you go to a Christian community, to an Eastern community, a pagan community. This is, in every community there's some discipline, whether they're Christians or not. As long as their parents in that community, there's going to be some discipline, some sense of morality, which comes down from the parents. If you skip that generation where the parents don't translate this to children, there's going to be a problem. It has to be transferred. So that sometimes your father tells you, Tonny, is that's how I brought you up, isn't it? They don't even care that you're a Christian or not, is it? Simply, is that how I put you? Because they know that they have a responsibility to which they be accountable. Yes, Secretary.
Because I think that the issue of history and fear that was put in place they're just walking around.
You say you're not loitering. That was where these characters told us. Look how they have turned out to be. Most of them have no fear of the police. You saw during the protests, guards go and stand before the police to and tell them, behave Never.
So I'm just thinking that people can transfer fear. That culture of restraining people without this. This is what comes out. Now, this is what I say. You follow that. And in future, I'm not a prophet, but I just don't
Anarchy.
If this is also not train their children in the way they are, and what was. That's what
Then I'm just saying with you because that's the situation. Before I give my message, you know, amazing is that it's always classic. And probably in your employment wise, maybe I'm overthinking here. Would you compare or contrast the employees or those who come probably to engage with you in the market, right? The JCs you have now, those who are trained from, they have done their law, they have come to look for some opportunities of internship. Would you compare them with the ones who come previously in terms of even their discipline, their respect, their, how their outlook in terms of life?
Yes, there is definitely the fear of the school mass is definitely different from us. I'm trying to mention schools that it's not a practice before I started before. This really so very many that I outside. When a child won't come from his chambers from the top of it, I know it's not sitting down with Sarah. There is a discussion. There's a climate of women. There's a club and the soil was that. They don't just but let's see how our community is to us. The disrespect is in there. And I think there's a change in terms of the soil and discipline. And when it comes to one person, the town I've seen on social media, but I've seen on social media that Gen Z this and say, I don't like to do that, but I don't do it. I don't feel like they should be able to do what I've seen that and you know if it happens in real life. Now that is a different for what we have. For us, should be given up there You like it, you want to try it first.
And then again, it didn't even matter how old you were, but if someone walked in and were sitting as you were greeting, you had to start. Doesn't matter who you are,
But you and I, we do it in office.
because it's the culture.
Yes, I have seen that some of us are start. And if I get if invites me there first, I get them to do that. It's just inside us.
See, please, you know how they greet. People are such a regular one. And that's the story.
And very combatant. Yeah, and they don't want to advise something. They always will say that was in your days. That was in your days.
Old school.
Yes, what I wanted to say was that I was surprised that the culture has changed so much that people do not want to do the things that they are saying. In fact, discipline is now only people reject culture.
Is it not sad? Sister Tonny, child abuse, so that this couple is going to have to Ivanovich, stay here. Yes, please.
So you people also know how I share it in my heart. The people who make the I'm sharing in my heart. I'm really sharing in my heart. In fact, there's a season in here. Sometimes when I tell them these things you are saying, they think I'm extreme. Yes, they think I'm extreme. Yes, they think I'm too much. Yes, they very, and I'm happy you used to be until as an example. That was my mistake.
I mean, gift is answering is there. Yes.
I think this is something that what the Lord was now telling Father to make a child.
Yes.
Because these are the damage effects of sin.
Yes.
You don't have
Yes.
because sin is bad.
Yes.
The society can get it. And this is what we are witnessing now. Because it's like parents are not taking it. Because this is what God is telling us what we're supposed to do.
And you know
Because
what's
it's like we are faith God in something.
You know what happens? That's why I'm concerned. Just like these people are concerned. I'm concerned in a generation where we are seeking, especially now women out of rebellion, feminism, they're rebelling away from marriage. The result is that children are obtained out of wedlock. You know the result? There's a lack of what? Authority. There's a lack of authority in that child's life. So it's not just about you. Where do you place that child at? Because that's being selfish. He or she is going to lack parenting from authority, from a father figure. Where it is by providence, it must involve the church. I saw a church, a biblical church, a reformed church, where, because for whatever reason the father was missing in action, they involved the church. Because God, by his sovereign grace, has appointed the father to be the figure of authority. So there's some sense of fear. See me walk in my house and see my wife walk in the house. Children respond differently. I'm telling you. Some have not been spoken, they just stepped in. And Judah was watching TV and he knows I'm supposed to watch. It is already 6. You have to remote whenever remote. And they vanish from the sitting room. And I'm not alone there. I just know that they're doing something wrong. But the mother is coming, Mommy, what have you brought for us? It's like Mommy brings things from the market, Daddy brings this. Listen. There's some fear that God has put for the sake of children in the family. So if your father don't fear, there's a problem. There's some element of fear. I remember my father was a very loving father, but I didn't fear them. Especially when he had some, what do you call those things on the face? Yeah, furrows on the head. He just knew that I'm in trouble. I am in trouble now. He began to pray inward, to intercede. Because Kitaumana, isn't it? The gentleman would just change out of nowhere. He would just be laughing and immediately he would change his countenance. And I was like, he can switch from person A to person B in a twinkle of an eye.
When that happens, switch like that with the children, and even at some point they don't think you are my God.
No, it's just being a man, isn't it? It's just being a man. We know how to switch. We can laugh, but when things are going to get out of hand, things change immediately. See, any leader, even look at leaders. They can be very smiley, but the moment you begin to make jokes out of things, I'm saying that I can. I know it. When you just want to bring chase for cousin, now it changes. You were just smiling, was okay, hugging them. They're going to be in trouble. Because that is by God's design. Otherwise, people can get out of hand. I'm telling you, there must be fear. Yes, my brother.
There's not someone that
Iko kwenye hili.
because of that. And also that following the processes. For example, and growing financial. When we were growing up, apparently, maybe the companies will be asked, where did you get this? But right now, many parents, acceptance, and there's a very celebrate. Tomorrow is coming more.
I don't know that the money has come from.
And yeah, we don't know where it comes from. And what we find out is that it's not like affecting the upper end, but most of this knowledge because of what.
How many of us experience that? There are days, now, two things happened those days. One, it was easy to pick money. It's not easy. I just don't know why. In fact, as children, we just pray and pick money. I used to go to school. But nowadays, you will pray, you can't get money. And somehow, if you pick the money and went with it home, it will be difficult to justify where you got it. So you are even afraid to pick it because mom will ask you, daddy will ask you, where have you gotten this money? Yes. And what were they doing? If not helping us, because they knew probably that this man has been stolen from a friend at school. They were encouraging morality. You must justify where this man is coming from. So we don't pick money. You see money and take a deviation. It's not a deviation. And then you just go. Because if you not explain where you got the money, it will put you in trouble. And you know the result. It was not very easy to steal money. Stealing was not something that was very easy. Not because of good people, but because the system was working. The systems was working out well. That's right.
It is a dangerous thing to downplay those who ordain family. Families that should consist of a father, a mother. The current problem we are facing here is in our nation. As you said, is a result of bad parenting. And it's easy even by the way of speaking, to know if a child has been brought up by both parents or has been brought up by a single parent. We have seen incidences whereby a child can speak back to their parent. The parent is speaking to her or to him, and he speaks back. And they just solve their things that way. That child goes from that family and will go outside. He will show that the same behavior to other people. That's why we have children not fearing the government. They don't fear the guns even. They will always say that when I die in this thing, tell mama that I died in the line of duty. Not even tell Baba, because Baba will not accept that. Tell mama is the one to be told. So if you want to get back to having good, parenting good children, we must insist on go back to our families and ensure that we take seriously this thing of family. Fathers play their roles as fathers, and mothers play their roles as mothers, and with that thing will kill this thing of Genesis.
Because the layers or what called layers of God already done us. Some of us have some learners. At every stage of life, there's authority. We never have true authority. You are a child and authority. You come to the nation like this, you come to church, authority. You go to work because of what? It has to be restrained all the time, with authority all the time. And those of us who saw in those days, if you saw a widow, widows were acting like fathers those days. If you're a widow, and those widows would beat you like a father. They knew that now I'm alone. I don't know what must that will happen.
Yes.
You now took charge. Because I mean, this is what was happening. Nowadays, it's not so nice and sleek. You can't compare videos of yesterday and videos of today. You cannot. Those are videos. In fact, the Bible encourages that in 1 Timothy 5. I want to stop very soon, next 5 minutes or so. Let's stop here, but really we look at that point next time. How God not only will employ restraint, but also rewards. Because rewards are incentives that encourage hard work. And right. Now morality is so bad that it has to be encouraged. Hard work is not commonplace. It has to be encouraged by incentives. So God has so ordered that it becomes so. I'm going to give us 2 texts and then we converse over this. God willing, we take it to the evening meditation hour for more discussion. But just to give you 2 texts, then we discuss Galatians. Yeah. Listen, look at this. Galatians 6, 7, and following. We begin from 6 and following. And then 2 Corinthians 9, 6. This should do. How God has instituted some principles in life, general life principles. And many of them, if you remember, if you are very diligent in attending the Lacan's classes, in the book of Proverbs, he kept underpinning the fact that Proverbs is full of general principles, isn't it, of life. In other words, they apply to everyone, whether believers or not. They are general life principles. Let's see some of them. For example, in Galatians, a principle that has been established by God to encourage, for example, incentive or to incentivize man for the sake of working hard and some sense of morality in the book of Galatians, if you're there. Someone read it? Read from 6. Yes. 6 up to 8.
Galatians 6 from verse 6 to 8. Let the one who is taught the word share all good things with the one who teaches. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever one sows, that will he also reap. For the one who sows to his own flesh will from the flesh reap corruption, but the one who sows to the Spirit will from the Spirit reap eternal life.
So there's a principle there. What principle is that? Sowing and reaping. So it is an amazing way because whatever you sow is whatever you reap. And that is true in life, isn't it? Anything. Whether you're a farmer, whether you're employed, whatever your vocation is, whatever you sow is the same thing you will reap. 2 Corinthians, again, in chapter 9, and see that principle again laid there in verse number 6. Someone read it. Yes.
The point is this: whenever someone is spared, we will also be spared. Whenever someone is bountiful, we also be bountiful. Each one must give as he has been spared.
No, just verse 6. The point is that whoever sows sparingly will also be spared. Both in terms of the actual thing that you sow. If you sow seeds of maize, you harvest maize. But also in terms of the measure, the output. God has control over output. And He is encouraging that output by putting principles that work. Principles that work in the world. So that this principle is meant to incentivize, to encourage hard work. Otherwise, people will be very lazy. People will not want to work, they want to eat. The result is that they will want to kill one another to get what they have eaten. Yeah, if someone does not work and then just comes and steals from you because you've been working hard. So God ensures that every human being on earth is encouraged so that whether you are a Christian or not, He provides rain and conducive environment for everyone, that whatever you get out of your work is your sweat. It applies whether you're a Christian or not. Those who work hard, if you have a child in school, if the days you are a student, you know that whatever you got out of the grace that are available or possible is what you deserve because you worked for it. If a child plays in school, they don't study their books, don't attend lecture halls or lecture sessions, whatever they are, don't expect good results. If my brother here, Paul, does not work very hard Monday to Saturday, Sunday catches up with him, your pocket is empty, isn't it? And you feel the pain. But if you have worked hard, you're able to get some reward out of it. So God has put in mechanisms in this world that is fallen to encourage morality. That you can work and what you get is commensurate with the input. There's an input-output principle. Whatever you give is. It does not matter whether you're Christian or not. So if a non-Christian is working very hard at work, I'm telling you, they'll just have things. Please don't be jealous about it, okay? Just put up with it. It is a principle established by God because it ensures that the environment and the atmosphere is conducive for everyone. And no wonder the Bible says He gives rain both to the evil and to the good, the just and the unjust, opportunities and everything else. And so He uses the principle of rewards. Someone works hard, and therefore that encourages morality because they are expecting what? Out of it. Not necessarily because you are working to serve God. You know, for us as Christians, why do we work? Vocation is to the glory of God, isn't it? But for the entire world, they are not working to glorify God. They are working to get rewards, to earn something out of it. And that somehow, God uses that one to maintain some level of morality in the world. It doesn't matter the motive. And so you begin to see that God is so wise that this applies to them as it applies to us. So that when one is converted, when one becomes a Christian, the motivation is now what changes. Not hard work. You don't say now that, our cousins have this principle, our cousins. They say that you can just wake up in the morning because you are a child of the King. Hallelujah, you are a child of the King. Wherever we step, we shall possess, isn't it? We shall take the enemy's gate, isn't it? So you don't need to work. Somehow expect some miraculous provision. And therefore the end is that they're disappointed. Because God has so good listen, which you cannot violate. What God does is God redeems. God redeems not only our minds and our hearts, not only does God redeem us, but even redeems our attitudes and affections. So that our attitude towards work is now what? Redeemed. We are reoriented to why we're supposed to work. Why did that amount work? Word of God. It was not necessarily because it was supposed to be, that food was going to be provided. God had given me food. You remember? He took time, planted the garden, it was stuffed with food. Everything was provided. God tells him now, enjoy. Work, take care of it because I've told you to do so. But supply, guaranteed. Now, do it as a vocation for my glory. But right now, we have to do it because we have to feed ourselves. And so God tells us, now you're going to feed yourself. From today henceforth, you must work to do what? To eat. You must sweat out to eat. So that principle of sweating, the grinding, is God ordained so that man can be sustained. And there is a reward that comes. That's how God restrains and God sustains us in this part of the country. That's how God operates. And our works is common. And this applies to everyone. So when you see an unbeliever walking up very early in the morning to go to work, don't be surprised if he's getting more out of income. And you're there waiting for it because you're a child of the King. You shall possess the territories of the enemy. You will wait and wait and wait and become resentful of God. Please, yes, my sister, laziness has never been encouraged by God. Laziness. Ask Alakel, have you been looking at the book of Proverbs? Laziness. It's not good. Yes, Lord.
It's just as you say, what they are doing is they are relations so that they kind of brainwash people's minds, the confidence. You know the story of the time that she was the more you put, the more you will get. The first investing in a car, investing in a car, that's where they investing in a car,
just misapplication.
They misapplied. They distort the principle. Yet God has put a principle that works. This one I'm telling you, this one works for everyone. Whether you are Christian or not, it will work. Because it is God ordained principle to run his own world. To ensure that somehow there's some sense of morality. Because it's going to encourage hard work. And so God is so wise in how he runs his world, isn't it? We are seeing how God runs the world, which is followed. He is sovereign in running the world. And he's a God of means. This is application of the means that God uses to run his own world. He can bypass the means miraculously, yet ordinarily he uses means to run his things. And he has ordained principles that will work. So you can't justify laziness as a Christian. It's no wonder Paul can say, he who does not work, how can you work? Where will the food come from? It means someone has worked for the food, isn't it? There. It doesn't work that way. Any questions? I want to stop here because we have the afternoon meditation to do. So we look at this truth in the meditation now. Please come with questions, comments, if this is helpful, so that we proceed from there. Can we pray?